What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Good night. Football, Thursday night. Eagles beat the Texans. Not shocking. But before we dive into the game, can I tell you about my friends at Turtlebox? Do you know what is right around the corner? Christmas. Do you know what's before that? Hanukkah. Do you know what? We all stress over presents, and rightfully so. It's hard to figure out what we want to get our brothers, our sisters, our brother-in-laws, our dads. I got the gift for you. Turtlebox. Turtleboxaudio.com, promo code John, is the loudest, most portable, and truly waterproof Bluetooth speaker on the market. It features ultra-long battery life, so you'll never have to worry about the music dying out when you're playing it. Barbecues, parties, now it's getting a little chilly, having some house parties, you want to play some tunes. That's where my friends at Turtlebox come in. Here's the other thing. They are now offering pro and collegiate team color combinations, so you can customize it in the colors of your favorite team for whoever you are getting it for. Got a Bills fan, a Steelers fan, an Alabama fan, an LSU fan, a USC fan. They got you covered. Go to turtleboxaudio.com. That's turtleboxaudio.com. Use the promo code John, spell it John. Get $20 off your first order as well as free shipping. This thing is awesome, not just for tailgating, backyard parties, indoor partings, you name it. Loudest, most portable, longest battery life Bluetooth speaker on the market. Again, turtleboxaudio.com. Enter the promo code John, for $20 off your first order and free shipping. Let's dive into some football. I have a pretty simple philosophy on Thursday Night Football. Is past about week 2 or week 3, I don't judge the road team like I would a college football team. Because as the season goes, you can get some weird matchups. And in college football, for example, when Alabama, when Georgia, when Ohio State, when Michigan, when USC, when these teams play bad teams late in the season, right? They're 8-1, they're playing a 2-win team. We don't just expect them to win. We expect them to dominate. And usually the point spread is 20 to 30 points, right? In the NFL, that's not the case. I mean, last week was the biggest point spread in Aaron Rodgers' career at 11.5. And he covered on the road against the Bills. Thursday Night Football, I throw it all out the window when it comes to judgment. Now, from a gambling standpoint, I didn't touch tonight, but looking at it, it's like, yeah, the Texans are home. 14 points, it makes sense. But the Eagles, you don't get style points Thursday Night Football in early November. Even if you're 7-0 playing, we'll get into the Texans here in a second, one of the worst teams in the league. You just have to win and get out. And that's what the Eagles did. Now, they ended up winning by 12 points, 29-17. But it was tight. I mean, I'll be honest, the first half, was watching a little more of the World Series, would peak up, then all of a sudden it's 14-14. I'm like, no, the Eagles aren't going to lose this to Davis Mills. And then the second half, they pick them off. A.J. Brown scores. It's like, yeah, the Eagles aren't going to lose. Of course they're not going to lose. And I am not going to nitpick the performance. They just beat the shit out of the Steelers about 4 days ago. You go on the road, multiple time zones. You win the game. You get out of there. You're 8-0. Peace. See ya. Here's my main takeaway from Philly, and it hit me tonight. I don't remember a quarterback. One, the guy that came into the draft, beside Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, and Doug Peterson, and Jalen's family, did that many people believe in Jalen as an NFL quarterback? Because I know people around Alabama. I know people around Oklahoma. Honestly, I don't know people around every major Power 5 program. Those are 2 programs I got people that I'm pretty close with. No one swore by him. In terms of being a future NFL starter, every college director, every GM that I know, beside Howie, was not a fan of Jalen. And then Jalen's rookie year, when he came in, we all thought it was kind of crazy. And then he becomes the full-time starter the following year. We're like, God, the Eagles are going to suck. Somehow they make the playoffs. Now, granted, they take 7 teams, but still made the playoffs. He showed he was a lot better than we all thought. But it was like, come on. You got a really good team. You're going to build your future around Jalen Hurts. I said that all off season. And I even picked them to win the division. But I was like, I don't ever remember a guy going from so questioned to like, I'm not saying he's like a star, but he's a high-end starting quarterback right now. If you just watch Jalen Hurts play in 2022, you go, holy shit, this guy is really good. Now, part of it is they get him A.J. Brown. Obviously, they got Goddard's a really good player, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, their offensive line. But you just put Jalen in a vacuum, he has improved. I would say he has come farther in a short period of time as any quarterback as I remember in recent history. That was not, I mean, Josh Allen came a long way in a short period of time. He was a 7th overall pick. Jalen was a mid-second round pick. I mean, he's obviously he's a top 10 quarterback this year. I mean, we could argue where he goes, but you watch him and go, that guy's really good. Now, how good is he going to be? Big playoff games, we'll see. But they're going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to get a bye. He's got to win 2 games at home to get to the Super Bowl. And a couple things they got going for him. One, we've talked about this before. The A.J. Brown trade is just an all-timer. And the Eagles, when Andy Reid took over in like 99 or 2000, whatever his first year was, to the transition to Howie, they have consistently been a big swing operation. They do not fuck around when it comes to opportunities. They have no problem making big trades. And this is one on a long list that goes, holy shit, this is going to work. And that guy with that quarterback, like, it just flows. Now, we knew AJ was a really good player. We all watched him play with Tennessee, but he has taken Jalen to a completely different level. And here's the other thing, and I saw it early on with the 49ers. The majority of teams do not have one really good corner. Like, if you have one really good corner, you're ahead of the pack. I was thinking, and maybe I'm crazy, I guess the Jets have a couple good corners. The majority of NFL teams do not feel good about their corner combination, let alone think, we got 2 stud starting cornerbacks. The Eagles traded for Slay a couple years ago. He's a stud. Also, you can hear him on the volume. I watched his volume YouTube after the Steeler game. Darius Slay's good. Like, Darius Slay was just breaking down the game. I was very entertained. Volume YouTube, check out Darius Slay. That's just, no one told me to do that. I swear to God, watched it on my own, was very impressed. James Bradbury, I mean, a couple years ago was viewed as like one of the better corners in the league. They have 2 high-end starting cornerbacks. Obviously, Slay's like a Pro Bowler. Bradbury's, probably right on the fringe. If you have 2 good starting cornerbacks and the rest of your team is really good, to me, if the Eagles coaches do not screw this up and Jalen just plays solid, they're going to be a mother, man. I don't think this Eagle team by any means is smoke and mirrors. Obviously, when you're 8-0, but I mean, anytime that you don't have like some super accomplished quarterback, but the 2 corners, the pass rush, the offensive skill guys, the offensive line, the birds are for real, man. And on the flip side, I'm not breaking down the Texans. I don't care. They suck. I think at this point in time, in early November, it's a 2-horse race for the number 1 overall pick. And the Texans, like, I think it's clear. Davis Mills does some things that are good, and you watch him sometimes, you're like, he stinks. That's usually what a backup quarterback is. They drafted him in the 3rd round. They didn't invest that much. The Texans and the Lions are competing now for the number 1 overall pick. And the only question moving forward is, who is that going to be? Because, like, I know who I like. I mean, it's clear. Bryce is the best player, and Will Levis is a very, very interesting prospect. So I text around my friends that do the SEC, that are scouting directors, and they're all in agreement. Bryce Young, there is no dispute, in a vacuum, is the best quarterback in this class. There is no close second. The problem is Bryce Young is like my height. He's like 5'10", 5'9.5". And in the NFL, like, I'm sorry, I know there's been some recent guys in the last decade, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. You would rather have a guy that's 6'4", 6'5". That's not Bryce. But the main problem with Bryce is not necessarily his height. He's like 175 pounds. He's tiny. He is a remarkable player. And if you're listening to this on Friday, you might watch him play LSU on Saturday night on the road. He'll throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. He is fucking badass. He is very small. And unlike Kyler, who's also very small, Kyler is one of the greatest athletes the NFL has ever seen. He is one of the fastest quarterbacks, if not the fastest quarterback the NFL has ever seen. It's hard to get a hand on him. Bryce is really much more like Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, he's a good athlete, but he's much more of a scramble to throw guy. And then Will Levis is actually the premium prospect, the size, the strength, the arm, the pro-style offense. But he plays on a team with no NFL players besides his running back. And a lot of people chime in with C.J. Stroud. Listen, I'm not a C.J. Stroud hater. This is not some personal deal here, no personal bias. Everyone I talked to said he is probably not going to be a top 5 quarterback. We'll see. Top 5 pick. Excuse me. He'll be the 3rd quarterback. It's between Bryce and Levis. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger here. Again, not a great athlete. Ohio State history. Still going to go probably in the top 10, but it's from who I talked to, Levis, Bryce, in some order. Bryce, if he was bigger, would be a lock to go number 1. And Levis, you can nitpick the box score all you want against Tennessee. Wasn't good. But he's playing with me and you at wide receiver. It's ugly. And physically, we know guys that are 6'4", 6'5", good athletes, high character guys with enormous arms, they usually don't fall in the draft. So right now, the Texans and the Lions are basically competing for their pick at the litter between those two guys. And last but not least, I recorded a lot of the podcast earlier, and I talked about the trade deadline. I realized I did not hit on the Dolphins trade. And I've thought a lot about, because what the Dolphins did was very bold, right? They traded the 49ers pick, which is a first rounder. And the 49ers is not like they're 7-1. I mean, they're 4-4, though it's pretty clear they'll probably be a 10 or 11 win team. But still, like having a pick in the 20s when you like, that's a big deal just to give up for a pass rusher. And I've watched Bradley Chubb loosely. I haven't like studied him like a top guy. And a lot of people that I text with said he was like, they wouldn't put him on the high end. He's a really good player. And the way the Dolphins paid him after trading for him reflects that, right? He got a little more than Max Crosby, even though I think Max Crosby, I haven't watched the Raiders much lately. I would take Max Crosby over Bradley Chubb, but, you know, we could argue that. And if a guy like Max Crosby or Bradley Chubb hit the open market, which they never do, a guy of that talent at 26, 27 years old in the peak of their powers at that position, left tackles, pass rushers, and obviously quarterbacks, you could argue top wide receivers, never hit the open market in their prime. Because if they did, if they are, let's just pick a number, $60 million guaranteed guy, they'd end up getting 85 because you have a bidding process, i.e. last year, Christian Kirk. I'm not comparing him to those guys, but my point is when you hit the open market, you get guys bidding on you and your number goes up. So if you're the Miami Dolphins, you need to improve your defense. If Bradley Chubb was a free agent, you would be heavily involved in signing him. And ultimately, the number which I saw that they signed him for, $110 million, 60 plus guaranteed, would actually be, you'd have to increase that by like 20 to 25% based on basically the inflation of free agency. So, which they would really want that guy, and they would ultimately try to sign him, and they probably would, right? No state income tax, Miami, easy place to get a guy to come play. They basically just traded that one for the right to make sure you got him, right? Which is a high price to pay. But if you're them and you go, well, the 49ers, who just won with Christian McCaffrey, let's just say that they go 10-7 or 11-6, they win the division. Well, we saw them last year. They won a couple playoff games. Let's just say they win one playoff game because it's a home playoff game, and all of a sudden that pick is 26. Well, more than likely, we're not going to get a player. Statistics show, it's like at that point in time, 30 to 35%, you're going to get a elite starting player, in the late 20s. And the chances that he's a good player like Bradley Chubb is, very, very low. So if you're them, your owner clearly wants to win. You're pretty competitive, though I think we have to all agree there is a clear tier, right? There's the Bills, the Chiefs. Let's say Roquan and the Ravens are right behind him. Like, I'm sorry, until Tua does, is anybody, I'm a gambler, and under no circumstances, because Miami's not going to win the division. So if you're not going to win the division, that means you're going to play on the road in the playoffs. I can't see them playing a team, I guess unless they play the Titans, that I would gamble on the Dolphins to win with Tua Tagovailoa as their starting quarterback. So more than likely, they are not going to win a playoff game. But you add Bradley Chubb, maybe Waddle, Hill, they just go nuts. Tua plays the game of their life. If the Dolphins go to the second round of the playoffs, that trade is worth it. You could argue if they make the playoffs, it's worth it, though they've won 19 games the last 2 years, but I understand it. To me, you look at the Broncos, like, did Denver do this trade because they were never going to pay this guy? Now, their general manager didn't draft him, but usually when you have good pass rushers, you don't like letting them walk. Russell's number takes a lot on their cap. They don't have a pick because they don't have several years of picks, right? Because they traded for Russell Wilson. So this is all a trickle-down effect of making the trade for a quarterback who is no longer an elite quarterback. And these are the ramifications of the decisions that you make. It's kind of like when we nitpick the Packers, like, well, when your quarterback makes $150 million, guaranteed $50 million a year, you're going to be missing some key positions because you're not able to pay for them. And you got to hope you draft players that fill those spots. And sometimes it's easier said than done because we all feel that, we got these 3 team needs, right? A wide receiver, a linebacker, and a safety. We got 7 draft picks. Let's go fill them. And then you draft, and then by the time the season comes, you're like, well, this safety kind of sucks, and this wide receiver's got a while to go. It's hard. It's the NFL. So I understand what the Dolphins did. A little bit of an overpay, but you're basically overpaying for the right to buy the player who would have been a free agent. And anytime a guy hits free agency, you're no lock to do. And I think the Broncos are a good example of, a team that made a bold trade and is not in a great position. And now they got to think long-term because of what they gave up for the quarterback. So that was a little bit of a wow trade, but, I understand both sides.